Be happy. Love yourself. Don't judge others. Forgive. Always be simple. Don't make distinctions. Give up the habit of choice. Let the mind dissolve. Give up preferring and desiring. Desire only your own awareness. Give up identifying with the body and the senses. Give up your attachment to meditation and service. Give up your attachment to detachment. Give up giving up. Reject nothing, accept nothing. Be still. But above all, be happy. In the end, you will find yourself just by knowing how things are. In just this small paragraph, there is profound wisdom, and there is an entire outline of how to conduct your practice, how to discover yourself. So that is what I want to talk about in today's video, talking about practical steps that we can take to implement this advice in this simple little paragraph. And I also want to clarify the part up about giving up your attachment to meditation. And I'm going to read a little more over here that talks a little more about that. So it says, it would be perverse and humorless to suppose that just because Ashtavakra, with his irreducible non-dualism, considers meditation a distracting habit, he means us to abandon our practice. Of course, from the perspective of unconditional freedom, where nothing makes any difference, meditation seems a comically self-important waste of time. But Ashtavakra makes it plain. The moment a fool gives up his spiritual practices, he falls prey to the fancies and desires. God help the seeker who presumes that since he is already and always fulfilled, he can give up trying. It is all a matter of knowing. We are all indeed already perfect. But until we know it, we had better deal with our ignorance. And that cannot be done just by listening to words. It requires sadhana, trying, doing what we do not wish to do. It means long, hard, self-effacing work. So how can Ashtavakra say, give up your attachment to meditation, yet at the same time he says, the moment a fool gives up his spiritual practices, he falls prey to fancies and desires? That is the paradox that I would also like to discuss. You see, because all over the non-dual community, many people do fall into the trap of, I am already that. There is no practice to be done. And although they say this on the intellectual level, they find themselves falling prey to fancies and desires, entangled in personal identity. So today what we will discuss is, if we are to do spiritual practice, what is there to practice? What does the spiritual practice look like? And how to conduct it in such a way that we are in alignment with this teaching of be happy, love yourself, don't judge others, forgive, always be simple, don't make distinctions, give up the habit of choice, let the mind dissolve, give up preferring and desiring. So that is coming up in today's video, a very deep dive on these teachings. Let's get right into it. When it comes to spiritual practice, first and foremost, as you already know, the foundation of it, because we do have to lay it down a proper foundation. Without the foundation, you can't really build on anything. So the foundation of the spiritual practice is silence. The foundation of the spiritual practice is your sit-down practice. Call it a sit-down practice, call it meditation, call it whatever you want, but it is time that you are taking every single day to totally empty yourself of all concepts, all notions, all past, all future, all expectation, all desire, all fear, all resistance, any even notion of being a so-and-so, needing to get somewhere. Like in those moments, you're entirely giving yourself over to God or life, meaning you're becoming empty of who you are, meaning no person. In that moment, the person who you take yourself to be Does not matter. In those moments, your personal life has no meaning. You're entirely emptying yourself. The sit down practice is very, very important. We try to do this during the day. We say, I don't really need the sit down practice. I'll just try to practice during the day. But if there isn't that foundation of, you just withdrawing from the senses, withdrawing from the mind, and allowing yourself to brew in the absence of concepts, then chances are that throughout the day, you'll just be swept by the current of circumstances, the current of thoughts, feelings, sensations. So when it comes to spiritual practice, the first thing always that I'll speak of is your sit down practice of silence, where you are willingly withdrawing from everything else and simply being, boiling down to your essence of simply being, nameless, idealess, conceptless being. Because it is there where wisdom arises. It is there where clarity arises, understanding. It is there even your capacity to be self-aware in the current of change strengthens, increases. After the sit down practice point, right, I'm going to break down many different points what spiritual practice consists of. And it looks like, oh my God, there's so much to do. There's so many things to practice. How can you possibly do that while also having to engage in your personal life? But you see, one who has established a practice of total emptying, one who just has that solid foundation, for such a one, it is all the rest of the things become much more simpler. They're no longer as much of a struggle. And it's almost like it's a one holistic integration rather than you individually making an effort to practice all these little things that we're about to talk about. So as we are talking today and you think, oh my God, there's so many things to practice. How could I possibly do all of this? Know that like all these things will be done simultaneously by you the more you actually give into silence. The more you keep running away from silence, the more all of these things will seem like such a chore. Your personal concerns will always take priority over these things, over this practice. And even when you try to practice, it will feel like such a struggle because there isn't that foundation of absence of concepts. Okay, so let's get into the first thing. So once we do have this daily sit down practice established, and we are allowing ourselves to just sink into silent being, silent knowing, then of course, your personal life is still there and you're just, you have a theme flowing here. So then the personal life also becomes your spiritual practice. It's not like spiritual practice is only in when you are in your room and your eyes are closed and you're meditating. And then when you're in your personal life, then it's just about the person and what all these things. No. Now you have to use this personal life to practice these principles. So what are these principles? So the first thing that we have to, as we go about our personal life and this personal journey is unfolding, this is where we have to constantly discern between the seer and the seen. We have to constantly discern between the changeless and the transient, the one and the many. So this is a big component of self-inquiry, right? Self-inquiry doesn't just happen with your eyes closed, but also throughout your waking experience. It's just an ongoing discernment. Whenever there is a moment, whenever there is a remembrance, ongoing silent contemplation about that which is seeing, that which is aware, versus that which is being seen. We have to separate these because right now it's mixed. The seer is mixed with the seen. The seer is entangled in the seen, taken to be the seen. The one is taken to be the many. The I is taken to be objects. So we have to discern. That's a wonderful word, discern, between that which is aware, me, I, self, and that which is not aware, that which is something that I'm actually aware of. This has to be a constant investigation. It's not a one-time seeing. It is something that has to become a way of living, a constant discerning between I and objects, self, seer, and seen. See what is changeless about your experience in every experience as your life unfolds, and see what is changing. Everything that is changing, discard it as the not self, right? Because here we are in a quest for self-discovery. We're trying to understand who I am. We're trying to understand what is all of this. The teaching has beautifully laid it out for us that in order to understand ourselves, in order for this wisdom to arise, we need to discern in this way between the seer and the seen, the changeless and the transient, the one and the many. The many, discard it as the not self. Don't identify with it. The seen, what you are aware of, discard it as the not self. Don't identify with it. The change, whatever changes, discard it as the not self. Don't identify with it. This is the way of self-inquiry, constantly discerning these things and isolating the I, meaning holding on to the sense of identity and not allowing it to mix with objects, with things that you are aware of, with what changes, with the many. The more we do this, the more we grow in that self-remembrance, that self-awareness, that non-conceptual self-beingness. And the grasp of ego are becoming weaker. The blinding capacity of the mind is becoming weaker through that discernment. So this must go on as life goes on. And we, at many stages, think that, oh, I understand this. But you'll see that as you continue to practice this, you'll look back at the time that you thought you understood it and you're like, wow, like I was barely touching the surface. And just by continuing to discern in this way, you start to see how many subtle layers of mind your beingness was mixed with, your selfhood, your identity was mixed with. But we couldn't see that before because like it was operating as us. But through this constant discernment, it becomes objectified. And when it becomes objectified, the identification is broken, the link is broken. The moment something becomes the seen, it is no longer myself. I am the seer of it. I am not that. So we must allow this to continue. Now, of course, with that, as we're doing this investigation, as we're practicing daily, your life will go through many ups and downs. The future will always be uncertain, right? Why shouldn't it be? That is literally the future. It is the unknown. Another word for future is the unknown. And another word for future is life. Another word for unknown is life. It is literally like even at the cusp of this moment, the next moment is totally unknown. Now, the mind cannot face life. The mind likes to stay in conceptual reality. It likes to stay only in mind, past and future. Mind doesn't know life. Mind only knows ideas about life, which it filters in the method of past and future. But past and mind's idea of future is not really life. Life is the very unknown aliveness here and now. It is the ultimate potentiality here and now, which is manifesting moment by moment as many things. Mind doesn't know life. That is a very important thing to understand. So facing the possibility of total unknown, mind worries, mind fears. mind concerns. And this is one of the most important things for you that you can do. That as your life unfolds, no matter what circumstance you find yourself in, and whatever may be coming up for you, you have to root out this worry, this fear, this anxiety about the future. Concern is the strongest glue that keeps us in illusion, keeps us stuck in illusion. Concern. And notice how we only concern on behalf of the person that we take ourselves to be. We concern on the things we may lose or may not gain, what may be taken away from me, the person, which is bad because it will diminish my self-image, the well-being of the person. So instead of remaining in this constant conceptual prison of past and future, we have to root out worry. We have to learn to see how worry keeps us in self-image, in ego, in suffering. The more you see it, the more you're willing to let it go. It certainly is not easy to let go of worry. But here we are given a very simple tool to let go of worry. As long as you remain addicted to the thoughts of worry, there's no hope. But here we learn to train our attention that when worry or fear or anxiety arises, you have to train yourself to take your attention away from the thoughts of worry, which keep you in the conceptual prison, to just the whatever sensation is present of worry, of fear. Or if there's no particular sensation of that emotion, just bring it to what is actual, which is your sensation of body. When you learn to do this, when you train yourself to do this, no matter how hard it is, you follow this principle rather than succumbing to your worry, you will start seeing that the clutches of worry become weaker and weaker. Even this feeling like, oh, it's so hard and I can't do this, the clutch of that idea, which is all it is, an idea, it will start to become weaker and weaker. There's no question about it. The only problem is that we do not trust the teaching and apply the teaching and abide by the principle of the teaching in the most difficult of times, and we succumb to our worry. We give greater reality to our worry and concern than we do to the teaching and the need of it. There's your problem right there. There's the obstacle and also the solution. No matter how important it seems, overcome this ghost by just abiding by the teaching. And every time you do, life will reward you. Life will show you how, yes, you did not need to worry. You did not need to constantly concern. Concern is not keeping your life together. That things still happen just the way they need to. So this is a very important point, because as long as concern and worry and fear are prominent in your mind, your thoughts will be so restless and they will be so successful in keeping you glued to personal identity and personal life. This is one of the greatest steps we can take to start being free from the clutches of ego. I see you have some questions. Doris, you said it sure does worry and concern. How do you root it out? It feels so strong sometimes. Yes, right? So what we just spoke of. It doesn't matter how strong it feels sometimes. The obstacle is you believe in worry more than you believe in the teaching. The moment you start to reverse that, the moment you start to place your faith in the teaching over what you concern, over your thoughts, over your attachment to thinking, there it is. The whole thing will start to turn upside down. And even the strongness of worry won't be as potent anymore. So that is the invitation. And of course, the sit-down practice is a prerequisite for this. Otherwise, again, like if we're not growing in that space within, if we're not totally devoting ourselves to the sit down practice and just becoming totally empty, even when there's no worry or other concern or whatever, then how can we expect in moments of worry and fear and moments where it's very difficult to be able to do that, to not get lost in it, to not get swept away from it by it? You see, it just won't be possible. So the sit down practice is a prerequisite, and not just sitting down, with your eyes closed and thinking, but rather really devoting yourself to the pointer, making as much effort as you need, going as hard as you want in that practice, being very intense and extreme about it, emptying all thoughts in that moment and acknowledging, so your sit down practice, of course, consists of either awareness of sensation or awareness of awareness. It depends on you what pointer resonates with you most and calls to you most, but you have to have a certain intensity about it in your sit down meditation sessions. And then a total devotion to the teaching in moments of worry, so that way you're able to practice this rather than get swept away by your worry, giving reality to those concepts. And that's what worry is. It's just all entirely conceptual. So that is a very, very big aspect of this meditation practice and for the purification of mind. Because a mind which worries and which fears, it's polluted, And so we have to observe this pollution within us and no longer want it. By succumbing to worry, it only perpetuates itself. So you may get that little hit of satisfaction by worrying. It's funny how it works, right? We want to be free of it, but we also give into it. But the more we give into it, the more it becomes a stronger imprint in the mind. So the more the mind becomes polluted. So we must see this, we must observe this within ourselves, and we must no longer give in to conceptual worrying, fearing, concerning. And certain points that I'm going to discuss in just a moment soon, having those attitudes will diminish worry. Having those attitudes will make your worry irrelevant. Okay. So the next point is constant self-purification through self-observation. So as you go about your life and these ups and downs are happening and things good and bad is happening, whatever is unfolding, you have to constantly observe your motives, your intentions, your actions. And you have to see what creates harmony and what creates dysfunction. It's quite simple. Observe within you what you're engaging in that creates unhappiness and misery for yourself and others, and discard it. And observe within you what creates happiness, harmony, flow for yourself and others, and buy into that. Do more of that. You need not even do more of that. Just by learning to discard the dysfunctional, you're naturally going to be more and more harmonious and happy. It's almost like when we're cleaning something, we're not doing something to clean it. We're just like removing the dirt, We're removing the impurities. By removing the impurities, that which is just is as it is. So this constant self-purification must go on, and it requires self-honesty. It requires, again, a certain space, an awareness, which will be missing if the sit-down practice is not being devoted to. We don't grow in that capacity to observe ourselves honestly if we are not growing in self-awareness. You see, then our self-observation will be very limited because it will always be through a mental filter. Such subtle stuff, right? But you start to really understand all of this as you start to become more simple-minded, meaning not constantly thinking about life. The less you think about life, the more you actually understand life as it is. That's what meditation is about. It's about recognizing that which I am prior to thought. There's an intelligence there. There's a wisdom there that thought cannot give you. Again, as I said, thought knows nothing of life. It knows ideas about things. That's it. It does not know life. So if, let's say, we're neglecting the part about meditation, then we go about trying to observe ourselves through life. But our observation is very limited because we will only see a very small sliver of what there is to be seen. We will only learn a very small, in a very small window, as opposed to what there is to be learned, because our point of view of looking is very small. Meditation widens this point of view. Or you can say meditation removes the point of view, helping you able to see what you cannot see through mind. The mind, which is focused only in solid, rigid things. The eye of awareness has a much wider scope of understanding. So constant self-purification through self-observation. See yourself being selfish. See yourself being dysfunctional. See yourself being jealous, angry, fearful, resentful. Don't have pity on yourself. This is not a self-moaning and complaining type session. It is just through radical self-honesty, which is just observing without judgment. You see what is no longer creating harmony in your life. You see what is creating the dysfunction. And from there, you start to discard it. To observe these impurities within yourself is a really big thing, because by observing them, you're objectifying them. And by objectifying them, you're dissolving identification with them. By not observing them, it's not like you're protecting yourself from those tendencies. They continue to just operate as you. So very important that we observe ourselves and do so judgmentlessly. We need to observe our dysfunctional ego trying to constantly control, manipulate, judge, condemn, resent. It's full of arrogance, and we need to empty out this arrogance, and it only happens through self-observation. Bet you said a different perspective can help. So for example, a catastrophe can be changed into a disappointment, which is easier to cope with. I had a big concern and couldn't sleep, so I changed my view, which was just as believable without denying the situation, and then fell asleep. Need to be a bit creative for me. It works. A good stepping stone towards what you are saying. We are bigger than our problems. My approach has always been, forget the stepping stone, just go straight for the actual stuff. That's just me. Of course, you have to do what works for you. But if the teaching proposes something, why take stepping stones towards it? That was always my view. Like, why not just fully believe in the teaching and go and act in alignment with it? I very clearly saw that my way of doing things and my way of what I believe to be true and right wasn't really making me happy either. I've tried that all my life, and it didn't do anything for me. So why not entirely go into something that was a totally different point of view that didn't make sense to me yet and wasn't fully practical to me yet, but it feels truthful. Why am I here protecting my concern and fear? Don't I want to be free of them? Why am I believing in this silly notion that I can't be free of them, or it's hard? Like, by seeing that and just feeling even a sense of truthfulness in the teaching, I just felt like, okay, let's just fully have no doubt and go all in and act as the teaching is asking me to act. And from that, I found that to be the most beneficial approach with least amount of obstacles. Otherwise, the mind, who always wants to take stepping stones, will always just keep you in a sort of a and the next stepping stone, and the next stepping stone. It will always continue to create another stepping stone. That's just the way I saw it. But of course, you have to do like the way you feel best. Um, but yes, see, again, through self-observation, perhaps you're protecting your own concern, your own worry. And why so? And of course, always with this teaching, we're not denying any circumstance. Actually, only when you let go of concern over a circumstance does the intelligence about how to deal with it in the best possible manner arise within you. Concern keeps you limited in a very narrow context, narrow point of view, from where a very a proper solution is hardly you're receptive to it. So I found that the more you let go of concern, even if there's sort of some concrete problem or situation, by letting go of concern, by surrendering fear, the unknown takes over. And that unknown is a far greater intelligence than my own mind. And it takes care of life way better than I could. Okay, so the next component after self-purification, devoting your life to understanding life and self. Everything else is less important. So when we get into this teaching, we're just dabbling in it and we're doing it just to live a better life. And that's okay. But I think that must mature into something more pure rather than just using this teaching as a means to bettering your personal life. We have to mature into just seeing the need of this. Darshan shared a beautiful quote on our, not a quote, a teaching on our last call, where it was like a story of a person. I believe he was like running away from all these like animals, right? Like he needed a solution of how to deal with these animals. So he goes and asks a person in his life how to deal with this. Give me a solution to deal with these wild animals. Like how do I kill them? How do I deal with them? And the person told him to wake up. It's a beautiful analogy of there are many demons in your dream trying to get at you, trying to they appear to be very actual and real threats. The solution is, of course, there are dream solutions of like, okay, this is how you deal with this animal and go kill this demon and go kill that animal, whatever. But the real solution is waking up. So we can spend our life just toiling around in personal life. It's almost like the movie character in the movie is having a wonderful time in the movie and doing all these things. But the greater opportunity here is wake up. So we have to mature, and that's something silence does automatically, because as silence and as self-purification and self-observation, they weaken the reality of your personal identity, the seeming solidity of your personal self, the identification with just mere personal things. As that identity is weakening, I think it's impossible to put personal life first. Seeing the unreality of all of this, it forbids you from putting that first. It will no longer be the highest thing for you. So that is certainly, that comes as a natural thing from the other points that we've talked about so far. However, we need not wait. Here and now, again, through self-honesty, see why you're practicing this teaching, why you're practicing meditation, and purify that intent rather than maybe trying to get something personal, some sort of power to control life, some sort of only just well-being in some sort of some area of life, purify that intent to just discover and understand what all of this is. Discover yourself at your essence. It's a very beneficial attitude to have, that as this life unfolds, no longer am I just doing this. Okay, no longer am I just in this career for the sake of what I can achieve in this career. No longer am I just in this relationship so to gain all the pleasure and things that I can gain out of this relationship. No longer am I just no longer is my financial situation about just how much money I can accumulate, or my personal life about how many experiences I can accumulate. Let your entire life be the avenue through which you investigate and understand yourself and life. It just makes this entire spiritual path and practice much simpler and much easier. And it doesn't give you any room to just like complain and moan when things don't go your way, you know. And also, because your intent is more pure, the path opens up to you more. The understanding opens up to you more. So previously, we were dabbling in spirituality, but other things were more important to us. Now, other things can still be important, and we can, of course, we're going to engage in them. You have to, but no longer do they take the front seat. If anything, they are the avenues through which we explore this path, because there is no separation between personal life and spiritual life. The personal life is spiritual life. The personal life is the setting in which we play around and discover spiritual truths. Okay. So next point is be attached to nothing. Let whatever comes come, and whatever goes go. Don't need your life to go in any particular way. Totally getting rid of importance of me and mine. So this point flows with perfectly with the previous point. And this is one of the points which will render your concern useless. Why do we concern and fear and have so much anxiety? Because we are deeply attached to our idea of how things must go and what must not happen. When you are learning to practice the teaching of acceptance, letting whatever comes into your life come and whatever goes, go. When you are free of attachment to things, whether it be physical things or people, or whether it be your own beliefs or thoughts, feelings, anything that comes, let it come. Anything that goes, let it go. Allow life to flow through you. Total allowance, total acceptance, total freedom of movement. You're no longer becoming the thorn thorn resisting the movement of life. You're no longer just the person who clings and resists. You are the space of awareness in which all comes and goes. Doris, you said this one gives me anxiety. It's scary. The scarier it is, the more we are attached to our idea of being the one in control. And the more I invite you to let go, to live in this way. It will really, like, everything you want from this teaching, the peace you seek, the clarity you seek, is being blocked by not living in alignment with this. This is, of course, a hard one, because here, again, it's like diminishing the importance of you as an individual, is diminishing the importance that you attribute to me, the person. So of course, there's going to be a hard one. And again, there's not a one-time thing. It's a constant practice, because as you practice this, you will again and again notice how you are resisting, how you are clinging, and how that's creating suffering in your life. Because you're going to be practicing self-observation and self-purification, you're going to discard those tendencies more and more. So it is a practice that goes on. Don't look at it as a one-time thing. It's like claiming to the universe, okay, I accept, I let go, and then everything just flows. No, you have to live in alignment with this principle that you have undertaken. And through self-observation and self-honesty, every time you contract, you have to consciously remain open. Every time you resist, you have to consciously let go. This principle itself, it makes peace available here. The person who always wants to change something so that it may be peaceful never finds peace. But as the space of being, when you let what comes come, when you let what goes go, you find peace here. Not later, not, depending on something for something to be here or not be here. You find peace here, regardless of the contents of your experience. Take this challenge. Take this as a hypothesis. You don't have to believe in it, but through practice, you will find it to be true for yourself, and you can speak about it in the same conviction. So very scary, but that's the best part about this. The scarier things are on this path, the more they are needed. Because what fears? It is the mind which is losing its grasp. It is the false self which is becoming weaker, which you're learning to see the reality. It's like its solidity is becoming more and more transparent. So the scarier it is, look at it as like a fun thing, because if you're devoting your life to this, then it makes sense to do these things. It makes sense to go all in. And if you're truly living in acceptance and allowing your life to go whichever way it must, then, because notice the mind thinks, I can't practice this because what if my life falls apart? Because it has an idea of how life must go. So the fear is only arising because it is bought into some sort of expectation, some sort of attachment to how my life must go so that I may feel better about myself. So I may feel more as a bigger person, an actual thing. That is the ego right there, you see. So if you're devoting your life to this understanding, and if you're living in acceptance, and do so moment by moment, then even when the fear arises, observe how silly it is, and observe how it's arising on behalf of the personal self, not me, and have no interest in it. Even this, the mind will try to convince you to, okay, just, stepping stones. Do your best to go all in. That will be my advice. Okay. Chip, you said the first two are choices. This one, God in control, not us, isn't a choice. It's reality. And of course, created anxiety for me and I assume others. That's the beauty of it. There's I watched a lecture on surrender before a while back, many years back. And the lecturer was saying something along the lines of, we say, oh God, I surrender all of this to you and whatnot. And then God is like, what was yours to surrender in the first place? Like, it was never really yours. You were never really in control or in possession of that, to what you are saying you now surrender. So that is the mind for you. That is the ego. That is the personal self. There's an impression that I am in control. There's an impression that it is mine to give up. but we're not really giving up anything. And that's the beauty of this practice. We only realize that through the practice of it. Only by going in on that principle and that subtle layer of mind vanishing do we start to see how, oh, there is no such thing as me being in control and me being this and that. So that brings us to our next point. Living in constant surrender. Whatever God has chosen for me, I will embrace. Again, notice if you're practicing this attitude, of what use are your concerns? Whatever life, universe, God, whatever you feel comfortable with, source, self, whatever it has chosen for me, I will experience. That is the attitude of acceptance. I mean, you could take this path to it, or you can take the path of just total acceptance. It's the same thing. Acceptance is surrender. In it, there's no resistance to what is. There's no constant clinging, manipulating, resisting, complaining. There's a grace with which you can experience everything, pleasure and pain. When something is here, see it as what you must experience and let it come and go as it must. Let it stay, however, as long as it needs to stay. In this attitude, not only do you find peace, but also you find the lessons that whatever experience or circumstance is there has for you. So this constant surrender, I always look at it as like the thing which makes the spiritual path flow and keeps your practice from becoming very mechanical and mindy. If there's not this surrender, then the sit down practice and the day-to-day practice, it just becomes dry and more of just like another means to an end type situation. Whereas this constant surrender will keep your entire practice fresh. It will bring within you a certain gratitude, a certain, just the ability to experience whatever you need to experience, you know, a certain simplicity, openness, acceptance. So this is the topic. So the surrender is the topic of our week 7. And if that's, you know, like whenever you get to it in the course, definitely go through those lectures. It's in those 7 lectures, we discuss surrender in a very deep way. And it's something that makes spiritual practice much simpler, much easier. Not only spiritual practice, but also just your entire personal life in general. Okay. So the next point we have is rooting out unconscious behaviors by being aware and relinquishing attachment to them. Always being the bigger person. So this is sort of like, it feeds into the point with self-honesty and self-purification, self-observation, where in certain interactions and certain situations, be aware of your unconscious behaviors. Like, you know, in certain, like sometimes maybe you're talking to someone, or maybe even arguing with someone, and you may realize you're wrong, but you're too invested in that point of view now, and you can't, and you know you should just maybe apologize or make amends, but like you keep going. That is right there, ego. We must learn to observe. And again, you do so judgmentlessly. It's okay that you have fallen into this anger or fear or passion or whatever it may be. But from there, when you are aware of it, wake up and let it go and do whatever you must do to in a way let it go. So if it's in the conversation and you've been arguing and you just realize that you're wrong, just apologize. Sometimes things like apologizing or forgiving or being generous, being open, these things are hard for us because they diminish the value of person. This humility diminishes pride. And that's why when we have great pride, these things are very hard to do. But by constantly becoming conscious of these things in the moment that they're happening and choosing to be what we call be the bigger person, the entire grasp of your lower nature of all of these lower tendencies and notions and motives, it starts to become weaker. We have a lecture on this inside of the course also. It's all about the higher nature and the lower nature and how you can observe these lower tendencies within yourself. And by lower, we just mean they're very personal, self-centered. At the center of them is the person, and they're all just intending to protect the personal identity. But they only create dysfunction in your life. So by observing this, we start to move to the higher nature, which is rooted in the impersonal self. It is rooted in humility, in a much greater identity, in a universal identity. So rooting out unconscious behaviors. You see, we're naming these things one by one, and you may, as I said when I began this lecture, you may be saying, how can you possibly do all of these things? How can I be expected to practice all of these things? It's such an effort. That's what I mean. It is such an effort if you go about it one by one. But as long as you are surrendering to silence, as long as you have the foundation in place, you will find naturally your thought, feeling, action becomes more and more in alignment with all of these principles without you necessarily making a conscious effort to even do it. It's not even going to be something you're doing. It's just the natural way of living. So it becomes a more holistic approach rather than handpicking what to practice. But without the sit-down practice, all of this becomes very, very dry and hard to practice, really subtle, don't understand it. And personal life always remains more important. So just a few more, and then we can steer our conversation elsewhere or get into questions about this. So the next one is giving more than receiving. Being generous and open, giving freely without expectation. I feel the more we go down this path, the more we realize that it's just you're the beacon of light in this life, and it may not be reciprocated for you. I mean, to you, but it doesn't really matter. You no longer just give so that you can receive. You're no longer just giving for the sake of receiving with some sort of expectation. You're just giving. And I'm not just talking about physical resources and things. I'm just you must be a giver, of whatever you have to offer. You're giving your gifts to this world. You're giving, again, just whatever you have to offer, and you're doing so freely. Even in situations, sometimes the greatest thing you can give is attention. This is a sort of general advice that you can see for yourself where it is relevant and what you are giving and what you are constantly hoping to receive. But that's the general rule. Give, and give openly. Even when people don't reciprocate that, don't shut yours off, just give openly. Don't constantly hold an expectation. You'll find it to really harmonize everything in your life. And you'll find that it makes you more and more it makes you less and less person. You see? Notice how constant expectation motive, control. All of these things keep us person. Whereas what the things we're discussing, they diminish personal identity, they diminish personal pride. And you may think that like, oh, this pride and this personal identity is weakening. Am I not going to like get taken advantage of, or am I not just going to become irrelevant and obsolete? But you'll find the opposite. The less person you become, the bigger you really become, but not personally, in a different way. Okay. And the next one is attached to that as well. Work without being attached to the fruits of your labor. So what we were just talking, the conversation me and Daniel were having, you're going to be inspired to go in certain directions. Maybe you want to start up a new venture, or you want to do something for your loved ones, or you want to do this or that, right? This is the realm of doing and action, and things will happen, and they will happen through you, right? These inspirations will be reflected in your mind and you will pursue them. The mistake we make is that we're constantly attached to the outcomes of our actions. To a certain degree, you can have an idea of what you are hoping to achieve or get, to get to, but don't pay too much importance to that destination or outcome, understanding it to be entirely unknown. Just be very genuine in your own work. Be genuine in your whatever you feel inspired towards. Just keep moving and keep doing. Keep almost like even your work you are doing as an act of devotion to life, to God, and letting whatever comes from it, letting it happen. This advice will free you in personal life, and it will make available greater spiritual wisdom. I found it to be very, very valuable advice. It's something that we hear always. It's almost even become a cliche, but it's so, so true. Be focused in what you do rather than what you may hope to get from what you do. And then lastly, just finding happiness in what you have. I know it's easier to want what you do not have, but try to find happiness in what you have. It will simplify your life more than you know. There's a beautiful quote by Maharaj in the book I Am That, something along the lines of because someone asked him how to find peace, how to be happy, and he said, want what you have and do not want what you do not have. It's a simple recipe for happiness. So this just creates a certain simplicity in your life. And this allows you to just enjoy whatever is here and endure whatever, even if it's painful or unpleasant. And it goes hand in hand with just living in total surrender and acceptance. So these are just a few of the the attitudes and practices that I thought I'd write down today. I'm sure there are many more, but know that no matter how many of these things we list down, it's not that we do these one by one by specifically focusing on them. It's just we can, of course, focus on one over the other more prominently, but as we do so, even if we devote ourselves completely to one of these things, naturally our thought, feeling, and action aligns itself to all of these and becomes more holistic way of behavior, way of being. But yes, this is what spiritual practice consists of. So anytime you're confused, you can go over that again. And this is what I've sort of done my best to distill inside of the course as well, in a sort of a step-by-step format. We go down this teaching, through this teaching, from the practice component to the attitude you must have, to the things, to the how to let go of these things, and how to incorporate all of these into your life. So I hope all of that is being helpful. So today was a long video, but a deep dive on this I believed was very necessary. So I hope that it brought you value. Just a few things before you go, a few resources that will help you. I'm running a free community right now, which has some mini courses attached to it. It has mini courses on beginner meditation, the practice of acceptance and emotional freedom, letting go, and also self-inquiry. In that community, you can also submit questions to me. And based off of those questions, I make videos, short 5 to 10 minute videos that I post on my second channel, which is entirely established in your questions. So I'm going to link both those things down below. First, the community, which has my free resources and mini courses attached inside of it. And also the second link will be the YouTube channel, my second channel, where I answer your questions in short videos. Please go ahead and take a look at both of those and use if you'd like. Lastly, if you are looking for help with your spiritual practice and you want my guidance and support and a loving community to be a part of, to really help you integrate these teachings into your life step by step, learn more about my School of Awakening. It is a wonderful day-by-day meditation program that really helps you to embody this teaching and bridge the gap between intellectual understanding and experiential knowledge. I'll link that down below as well. Thanks again for watching today's video. I'll see you next time. Have a good day.